to the Radio Wammo Breakfast, only on Kiwi.
Yes, indeed, the Radio Wammo Breakfast here with you this morning, 10 minutes past 9. And joining us in the Kiwi studio is Graham Reid, host of Side Streets here on Kiwi FM on the weekends. And also, of course, travel writer as well, reviewer, music reviewer. Gosh, what don't you do, Graham Reid? Good morning.
What don't I do? Yeah.
Are you a cook? Do you cook?
Yes, I cook, and I cook very, very well.
That's actually one of the things I did want to find out about on your travels. How important is food and food discovery for you?
Oh, very important. Oh, yeah, I love going to different places and, eating the different foodstuffs. And one of the things that I've mentioned in the introduction to this book, though, is that, you get these TV programs where these chefs go off to Vietnam and they eat snake and they make a bloody great to-do out of it and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. If that's what you're offered or if that's what you choose to go and look for, then you just eat that. And I've eaten all sorts of very strange things. But I guess it's in the nature of television, isn't it? You make it look much more dramatic and exciting than it actually is. Or if you go out of your way looking for obscure food so that then you can say how bloody awful it was.
Yeah.
And I remember being in Korea and meeting some people, European people, who were determined to find dog on a menu somewhere.
Just because they've been told that was the extreme thing to do.
That's right. And then of course, I met up with them later on, and sure enough, they'd found this place. Well, I told them where what place was, actually. They went off, they came back. And of course, they didn't like it. They thought it was terrible, but I thought, well,
yeah.
What did you do that for?
Yeah.
But I've eaten, like fried wasps larvae and stuff like that in Vietnam, because, in Thailand, sorry, because that's what you do in places.
It just happened to be offered up to you.
It was, yeah, it was offered up. Well, I bought an old man a bag of dope. I bought him a bottle of whiskey. He gave me a bag of dope.
Yeah.
And we had a great conversation. Neither of us spoke each other's language. We had a great conversation for about an hour and a half. And during the course of that, we went out and got this wasp larvae and fried it up, and we ate that. And then he gave me a massage. Best massage I've ever had.
Wow,
I think. Yeah.
good.
It was a great.
It's quite a return, isn't it?
It
a
is.
Bag of dope and a massage.
A bottle of whiskey. It was good. It was a good bottle. It wasn't Mekong whiskey though.
I suppose. I mean, even the traditional traveller that may have normally have gone and stayed in a hotel now always wants to do this intrepid thing. I mean, it's been popularised, isn't it? Doing this intrepid thing.
Yeah, it's nonsense, eh? Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. I think that people want the drama, so they the same reason about the food. They go looking for it. I make the point very clearly in my book. That's not what I do. I don't strap on snowshoes and tramp across Russia for a year. I don't do that. I travel like most people travel. You go places, you meet people, you see things.
Is it also because intrepid travel is now it's kind of commercialised because people in countries now expect the intrepid travellers, so they provide the intrepid experience.
Oh yeah, you can get that everywhere you go now. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And yet, in point of fact, it seems to me that you and I know people say to me, "Oh, Graham, there's always a lot of drinking in your books," but you meet people in bars. I don't think you meet people on a hike up a mountain. And I remember the first time I went to Vietnam, which was a very long time ago now. It was '95, and the country had only just opened up. And I was up in Hanoi, and the people were going up to this Sapa village. A lot of Europeans were, there weren't very many Europeans, but the few that I met were all going up to Sapa, and they all came back with exactly the same story and exactly the same photographs, and I just avoided it. Yeah. And I went on a boat in Ha Long Bay for a few days with some local people, and that would just seem to me a much more, and that wasn't an intrepid experience in my, what I did. It was just, there was this opportunity to do that, and it was not uncomfortable. We pulled in at a little island, we stayed in just a mattress on a floor, but it was not it wasn't intrepid like that.
Well, how much preparation do you do before you arrive at a destination? How much research?
I read as depends on the destination, of course, but so some places I would read quite a bit of history about a place. I think you get to know people through their history, and I mean not long history, but particularly contemporary history. I've always found that it's really useful to know the names of 2 or 3 good rock bands in a place, because if you can just say, you're in a place and some music is playing and you say, is that so-and-so, even if you're 100% wrong, the people are impressed that you knew their rock band, and then they will start to talk to you about that, and so I always find that's a useful sort of thing.
Do you go in mind with any goals? Perhaps even to see that rock band.
I certainly have been to places with a particular purpose in mind. And in fact, in this book, the book is called The Idiot Boy Who Flew, and that's the long story at the very end, because my wife and I were in Naples, And I had, just before we'd gone to Europe, I had just started reading about this saint who was apparently a flying saint. The interesting thing about him was that he was also an idiot. Like, he's in the 17th century, so 1600s.
Yeah.
And he was an idiot boy. His parents didn't like him much, and he had no playmates, and they called him bocca aperta, which means open mouth, because he like that. So he was pretty dumb.
Yeah.
And I just thought, wouldn't it be interesting to go down to find, to the birthplace of this saint? It's in a place called Cupertino, and so that was the project. But in part, what happened was also the book that I was reading about the saint, which had been written a century ago, was interesting of itself, because this guy Norman Douglas, who wrote it, was he was a larger than life character, and he had come upon the story of the flying saint. So he tells it just a little bit in his own book. And so when I'm driving, I'm thinking about, well, I'm going to do this trip, and I'm reading what he said about this place. He never actually got to Cupertino, funnily enough. So, all this is kind of weaving through my head as I'm going, and I'm wondering, well, I'm not Catholic, I'm, not remotely interested in it. But, then I sort of got into this thing about, well, people who flew. And I remember Dalvanius Prime, the great Dal.
Yeah.
He took me to a place, and he said, this is where the kahurere were. They were the flying men around here, and so the story ends up being about not just the trip going down to Cupertino, which is a shithole, frankly.
Right.
And southern Italy is not the nicest place I've been.
Yeah.
So, the trip was kind of fruitless in that sense, but out of it came all this other stuff. And so I thought, well, that's actually an interesting narrative that goes, it takes you down to Cupertino, but it also takes you backwards and forwards in time to the saint's time, to Norman Douglas's time, and to the last pope who he made more saints than all the other popes put together.
Yeah.
And the question is why. So it's a sort of it's a travel story, come essay, come and Dalvanius is in there. So there you go.
In any of these places, have you suddenly stopped and gone, hang on, I could set roots here and stop and stay?
There are places that I've been, and they're the strangest of places. Like Flagstaff, Arizona. I don't know why, but I was there, and I just arrived, and there was just something about that place that felt entirely comfortable. And my wife and I had a very nice time there, met some interesting people, and historically it was an interesting place. And at the time, I think I was... I think I'd left the Herald at the time, and so I was kind of, a bit rootless and wondering what to do.
Yeah.
And when I came back, I even got online and looked to see if they had a journalism school at the university there. I thought, that is a place that I would like to go.
Yeah.
I have never been one of those people who thought that I'd love to live the life of, a Thai peasant farmer. That's a luxury that, rich white people always have. Try doing it. Nobody wants to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning behind a buffalo and plough a field. That's just romance gone crazy. So
your travel experiences in the book, over what sort of period of time have these taken place?
The last few years, I think. Yes, just the last few years, and they're in lots of different places. And also, I mean, some places were wonderful. There's a beautiful luxury hotel that I stayed in Sorrento. And there's a story about that, and going out for dinner in this magnificent sort of like 5-star Michelin, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
But by the same token, there's a story in there about being in Brunei, which I think is the most, I just thought it was an awful place. It was just, it was boring. It was just utterly boring, and people had warned me not to go.
Yeah.
And I persuaded myself that no, I would go and I would find something interesting, and damn, I couldn't find an interesting thing there at all. So, they're in different places, and some are set in a bar, say in New York or whatever, because something interesting happened in that one moment. You walk into a bar and you just think, well, I only want to find where an internet cafe is. I'll have a beer while I'm waiting. And something really strange and unusual happens.
It's where things happen when you least expect them, right?
I think if you're open, that's the best thing. You just go to be open to the opportunity of something happening.
Graham, thanks so much for telling us about it. The book is out now, The Idiot's Boy Who Flew and Other Travels in Elsewhere. And, of course, there's your website as well. Yeah,
I've got this Elsewhere website, which some people will know of because every week I post new music from all over the place, you know. So there's, I think I put up half a dozen or so new albums this week. I set myself crazy little projects too. I have just reviewed every single Paul McCartney album.
Oh, you're mad.
I know, but when you get into a project like that, the interesting thing is that he did some good stuff that just went right past people. You know, the recordings he did with Elvis Costello were terrific, and then of course he's done all this sort of weird electronica stuff under the name of The Fireman, and an even better one called Liverpool Sound Collage, which is just the most bizarre album. So you know, it's not just that sort of soft pop rock. So yeah, I do all that kind of stuff. So there's music and videos and all that. It's all up there.
Excellent, and of course the photos as well. Lots of photos from your travelling.
Photos and travel stories as well.
Yeah. Yep. Graham, thanks so much.
My pleasure.